Alright, guys, and we're live here on the Wrestling Rewind show number 20. What's it, 27? 27, yeah. Show number 27. That's crazy. We're really getting up there now, Dave. How's your week been, man? How are you?
Yeah, it's a great day for wrestling, everyone. How y'all doing?
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, we're not going to talk about it because it's too early, but it would be remiss for us to not mention what's going on. So, one of the reasons why we didn't do From the Dark this Friday was because Ian was said for us not to do it, based on what happened in the UK and Ireland with the wrestling stuff and the independent stuff, and he was he's friends like he, with a lot of guys there, so he can't believe what's going on. He wasn't in the right headspace. So look, we are going to do it maybe like 2 weeks down the line when he's feeling it. But look, everybody's rocked by what's going on here with this stuff, and if you know Ian, like he's a big um, a big UK wrestling, obviously wrestler fan, but also he knew all the guys there, and it's a big blow to the system, big blow to everybody. So that's why we didn't do the show. Why we're not going to talk about it now is because one, we don't want to. We don't feel, yeah, it's a bummer, and it's still too early to know what's going on. Obviously, anyone who is like convicted or it's proven, and obviously we believe the women coming forward in this, but if it's case of it's proven in that and it's without a doubt, yeah, these people should be, the book should be thrown at them and never work again or go to jail and all that kind of stuff. But right now, we want to kind of just wait and see, and don't want to make claims and aspersions with people purely because, like, one, we're not a wrestling media show. That's not what we
Yeah.
do. We're a review show from stuff that we like, and we just don't want to talk about it. It's still too early. We're not in the Brocken news business, so it's not our gig. There's loads of places that are talking about it, and go and check them out. But for most, we made a decision last night. Hey, look, we're not going to talk about it. So obviously, when there's an update and when this is all kind of ironed out, we'll probably mention it. But this is not the time nor place to do that. So sorry, guys. That's just how the cookie crumbles. What we are going to talk about is something way more fun. Well, the Undertaker retired. Apparently, we might get to that. But the meat of the show we're going to get into is one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time. Um, and it's one that, for some reason, isn't talked about, and I think I know exactly why it's not talked about. It's because you've never seen it. In
Yeah.
America, it was just one of those things. This was like of its time, like very much of its time. Like it just couldn't happen now. But this period.
No, no, it could not.
No, it could not. Like loads of things could happen. I told you it was fun. I told you
Oh,
it
so
was
much
fun.
fun. So much
Um,
fun.
but what I mean, even from like the logistics of it, this whole show exists in a vacuum, but also doesn't because it ties into everything that's going on at the same time.
And
So
that's
it's
the best pun Dare will make for the entire night. We'll
uh
get to that shortly.
but what's cool about this period is, in particular, I love the fact that, like, for me, this is like these 3 months are like ingrained into my brain, and they're so important. Like I think every wrestling fan has those moments that are like ingrained, and this is one of them. From SummerSlam to Armageddon 1999, I know every single play, move, moment, episode of Raw, all that kind of stuff, because it was such a really weird time. Like everyone says, the Monday Night Wars kind of ended in 2001. Not really. This is kind of when they ended, because this is when WWE really changed, and you see a lot of like they went from struggling to victory lamping, and this is one of the big angles where they started doing it. Like even the way they had the stuff formatted out. So we had SummerSlam, which we will talk about at some point because that's such a great show. Then we had Unforgiven, which we will talk about because it's such a bad show. Um, well, we've kind of talked about it with Kenneth from Hell, and then we had this show, which is literally took place like a week later. and then it built into No Mercy. So it was a show that was in continuity, but also wasn't. And that's why I wanted to talk about it. One, because like most people, I've never heard an American take on this, and I've never heard anyone really talk about it. Even OSW Review, I don't think talked about Rebellion 1999. If they have, then let me know, because I would love them to talk about this. But it's one of my favorite shows, and I just think it's great. Like it's so of its time, but it's also not. Like I don't know, the set design is fantastic. I love Michael Hayes on commentary. I love how just
Yeah, that stuck out to me too. I was
right.
super
Isn't
surprised.
it super
Yeah.
great? And just the weird kind of presentation of it with the weird table that isn't the announce table, the pyro that isn't the pyro, the
Great
stage.
pyro though.
Oh,
Still better pyro than we
so good.
usually get. I'll say
It's so
that.
good. Like it's one of those shows that when you go back and watch it, it sticks out to be like a mix between an actual pay per view and a house show.
Yeah, that was the vibe that I was getting. I was trying to figure out exactly where this fell. And like you mentioned, I had never seen this show. Now, granted, as we get into the topics of the show, this was during a time period when, I was what, 10 years old. So
Yep.
my parents would see the product and go, yeah, you're not watching this.
So you had good parents, Dave.
Yeah.
Or at least oh no, my parents are great, but me and Gary have joked many times when we're doing the show that how did our parents let us watch this? Like I like for context with this show, right? This was one
Yeah.
of the only shows that was on during the day for us.
Mm.
This was a Saturday night. I'll never forget it. It was a Saturday night. It was like over at like 10 p.m. And it was weird because you'd order it on Sky Box Office, and everybody would come around and watch it. Like all of us as kids would come around and watch it. It's like this feels really weird because we don't get this ever. This was just never a thing. Um, but yeah, our parent like we've joked many times that our parents we don't know how we were allowed to watch wrestling. Like, honest to God, like it's really bad. Like some of it is just like the whole Jeff Jarrett thing. If that was today, cancel culture rung and won him up like, you know, like
Oh, it absolutely would.
that's how they
And
opened
yeah,
the
I gotta
show.
say, like, vacuum technology, I did not realize has come so far in 20 years.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I love how much of a heel he was, and remember, this was on his way out. This was just before
Yes.
he was about to leave. So for anyone who doesn't know, Jeff Jarrett was the Intercontinental Champion, and he was literally on his way out of WWE to WCW. Now, he he would lose the belt a month later to China, and then that would be it. In a good housekeeping match, which is an atrocious match. But his whole gimmick at the time was being like an uber misogynist, and it is very distasteful, but that's the point, right? It's like you don't sit there and go, oh, sure, isn't he great? It's like no, you're horrible. You're a horrible, horrible man. But that's the gimmick.
Yeah,
And
the
then,
point you're not supposed to like him at all. And actually, I mean, he was basically doing a not as well performed Andy Kaufman gimmick
yeah,
from the 70s or 80s, whatever it was. Like that was what Kaufman used to do. Go around, like demean the women in the crowd, try and get them into the ring to like prove that they could hold up to him. That was, the whole intergender thing, which was
hmm.
absolutely pure brilliance. And I think that's what they were trying to capture a little bit with this angle. Unfortunately, the quote unquote fan who came into the ring couldn't sell a figure four leg lock to save her life,
No,
but
she
that's
could not.
okay.
That's okay. She
That's
tried, and
okay.
that's the main thing, right? She tried.
She tried.
But yeah,
Um,
like I thought that was the worst part. But this is something that Jeff Jarrett was doing throughout this whole time period. This was his big shtick, where he'd pull women out of the crowd, he'd invite them in, and then slap on the figure four leg lock. That was his kind of thing because his big feud was with China. Now the
right.
weird thing about this is like this would continue. China would end up winning the belt and have a feud with Jericho, where Jericho would end up taking over that role. And that's what a lot of people seem to kind of forget. Like Jericho ends up being um, that kind of stand-in uh, for Jeff Jarrett, But like Jeff Jarrett had a massive role in this pay-per-view. Like
That shocked me. I had no idea he was going to be involved in so many storylines and matches.
Mm.
Was he like super over in the UK and I wasn't aware or something? Not over, but like super popular there or something.
I don't recall. I don't recall. And just
Like,
one thing, I'm gonna have to upload this later to YouTube because our YouTube isn't working at the moment, but Twitch, Periscope, and Mixer are. So I will upload it to YouTube later. Sorry, guys. But yeah, it wasn't that he was super popular. It was that I don't know. I think he. It's kind of hard to know what's going back, and I think if I got to talk to Jeff Jarrett again, I might actually ask him about this whole time period, because I really should have and wish I did. But I think it was more he knew it was on the way out and he wanted to kind of use him as much as he could. But to start off the show, where he had a really good match with D'Lo Brown, like it was a very competitive. That was one thing about these matches. While they weren't the biggest matches in the world, none of them were bad. And I always loved D'Lo Brown as far as like an in-ring performer. I thought he was always great. So to have him in the ring there with Jeff Jarrett, I think they had a great feud, a nice little 6-minute match. But then he kind of came back, and then, had a not so good match with China, which ended with British Bulldog brutalizing China with a running power slam. So
right. Yeah. D'Lo Brown took me by surprise in this pay-per-view. Because every time he tried to go to whether it was TNA or coming back for the Royal Rumble, his reception was never that great. But at this time when he was actually active, the ovation was massive that he
yeah,
got from the crowd.
like that's the thing when you're watching the crowd, and it's one thing that I don't know. Whenever I watch these shows, I'm just so energized by them because the crowd is so into it and it's so enjoyable. And even if some of the stuff in the ring is either bad or it's just purely distasteful, you're like, well, the crowd seems to like it, so it's okay. You
Yeah,
know,
the crowd's not in it for themselves like
no,
they seem to be nowadays. They're
that's
not
the thing.
trying to get themselves over. They're just enjoying the product.
Yeah, it's like even though it's a time when kayfabe obviously wasn't real and everybody knew it was fake, everyone still went in with this like childlike innocence to it. Where
Yes.
they were like, oh, we're into this and we know it's a show, and we're going to fully give ourselves over to it being a show. And I think that's what we've lost now in the post internet, post everyone being offended by everything, PG post PG era kind of stuff, where it's like, right, this couldn't be done now because either, as you said, it'll be hijacked by people who want to get themselves over, or WWE wouldn't do it because they couldn't. Like, and now one thing that shocked me on this as well, that the actual women's match, well, it wasn't great. It wasn't bad either. It was a four corners match. So what's weird about this time period as well, like this
Did
specific,
I fall asleep? There was a women's match during
there
this.
was a four corners women's match. Yeah.
I genuinely have no notes about this. I took notes from the whole show. I have nothing about a women's match. I don't know
That's
how I
fair.
missed it. I don't know if I went somewhere. I don't know what
It
happened.
was 3 minutes. It was 3 minutes. Don't
Well,
worry.
there you go. I must have gone to like the kitchen or
You
something.
probably did, and this is what I mean. This was still a time period when women's wrestling was still a bathroom break. It wasn't as bad as it would become, but it was still a competitive thing where the belt was still being actively defended. But that's what I mean. Like 1999 is a really
Are you
weird.
sure there was a women's
Yeah,
match
there
and you're
was.
not just talking about The
No,
Godfather?
I literally watched it 2 minutes ago. It was there. I'm looking
I
at the
got
notes
nothing.
now. I'm looking at
Got
the notes
nothing.
now. Luna Fashawn came out. Like, come on, dude. How did you forget Luna
Got
Fashawn was
nothing.
on the card?
I think it's my old recapper's brain. Just a women's match
It's just
block.
off.
I don't know what happened. Oh, I'd be remiss if I did not mention. I have the logo behind me if you're watching this in video.
Isn't it cool?
But the opening little video that they did was a bit freaky
Mm.
compared to what's actually going on in the world today. The same symbols, cars being turned over in streets. I was like, oh my
Well,
gosh, what am I
well,
watching?
the title is Rebellion. Like that
It
is
is, yeah.
and then they also had another one called Insurrection, which was never as
Yes.
good as a title. Like, I'll be honest with you, whenever what's going on in the world is yeah, it's kind of weird, but
It was
like
just really
yeah,
weird
it's weird.
vibes. I was like, they could literally be using footage from today and using it in this is just
Well, I don't
I
know.
don't know, every 20 years, right? We always say every 20 years.
Right? But this happened in October, so we're a little bit ahead of the curve there, I suppose.
Oh, well, then we have great things to look forward to.
But one thing I will like, as I said, whenever I would like make even to today, whenever I get SmackDown versus Raw and I go to the customs creations, I always make sure I have Rebellion in my universe, because like that's how much I love it. Like two pay-per-views I always love, and they're two of my favorite shows that they don't do anymore. Rebellion and Cyber Sunday are Taboo Tuesday. I think they're just really cool. Like, and not because I have emotional attachment to Rebellion, I'll be straight with you, but I just think for what it was and for how they did it, I think this is the perfect way to have a pay-per-view overseas, where it feels like a pay-per-view, but it's also not. You know, like nothing really big happens, but it's not a waste of time. Like this show wasn't a waste of time.
No.
You know. Also,
And it wasn't super long. It was only 2 hours and like 20 some minutes.
Yeah, it was
It
grand.
was perfect.
It was grand. It had like a nice breezy through it as well. It wasn't killed to death by gimmick matches. It had my favorite steel cage match of all time. And
yeah, we'll get to that at the end of the show.
Will.
That was really solid. Yeah,
we will. But like, it had so much in it that if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's on the network. It's very easy to find, and you'll really enjoy it. The Chris Jericho Road Dogg stuff was weird, because this is a weird time period for Chris Jericho too, because he debuts at SummerSlam, has a really cool promo, has one of the best. No, he didn't debut at SummerSlam. He debuted on Raw, but had one of the best pay-per-view debuts on top of the Ken Shamrock's Lions Den against the Road Dogg, where he calls a Summer Sham. And if you haven't seen that promo, it's fantastic. So he sets up this like feud with the Road Dogg and X-Pac and Ken Shamrock. Ken Shamrock disappears at some point, and his last match is with Jericho on SmackDown. It's a hardcore match, and then you never see Ken Shamrock again, which as a 10-year-old I was very upset, because I love Ken Shamrock. And yeah, and then he just ends up in this feud with the Road Dogg for some reason, and it never really did anything for me. I think this was kind of like they were putting them on ice. Apparently he was supposed to do a little bit more than what he would end up doing, but then he fell into the China thing, and 2000 is when he really took off. So this is a weird period for Jericho. I also forgot about Jericho's floozy that he came to the ring with, Mr. Hughes.
Oh yes, good stuff. Good stuff.
What? Floozy?
Floozy, yeah, floozy. That's the. I mean, there were a lot of great great lines in terms of ways to describe things. I think I wrote down my favorite line of the night, which was by Jim Ross during the Godfathers thing, and it was, and I quote, "Oh my, hoes aplenty."
God. Oh, like, yeah, we'll get
just
to that.
Hearing it come out of his mouth, I was like, oh my gosh.
We'll get
and that, like I said earlier, like when I saw that, that's when I went, oh right, this is why I wasn't allowed to watch.
Yeah, no, we'll get
stuff.
to that. I have a lot to say about that specific match, because yeah, we'll get to that. But I know Road Dogg is always entertaining. I think this is the best run of Road Dogg's career. This again, SummerSlam to Armageddon, where he's doing a lot and he's having a lot of fun and he looks healthy and he's quite good in the ring. This is a brilliant little time period. I love this. This is like, for me, this is my favorite period of wrestling. Those 4 or 5 months. I think it's just everything brilliant with it, you know. There's some good stuff happening in WCW. ECW was still there, and then you had WWE just doing really, really entertaining things. And presentation wise, setting stuff up in unique ways. Even in a show like this, like, that's why it's so weird. They do a major angle halfway through the show where British Bulldog is freaking out about not having a title match because The Rock screws him over on SummerSlam, on Raw the night before. And then he picks up a trash can and throws it, like, just freaks out and throws it at the wall, and it hits Stephanie. And that sets up more angles and the rest of the night. Also, this is during the middle of the referee strike, which is a carryover from Unforgiven, where all the referees were sick of getting beaten up and he went on strike. Stone Cold Steve Austin ends up being the enforcer in the stick pack challenge, and that's what happens. This is post that, when all the referees have more authority and you see them not be bullied around as much as they were. So It's an
I mean, unless you're Tim White, in which
unless you're Tim White.
case the Godfather will flank you with his hose,
Well, he looked like
and
he's
you will be smothered to the ground by them.
well, he looked like he had a good time. So that's
I don't think he was complaining.
no, I don't think he was complaining either. But let's talk about that match.
I
Right?
think I think we have to. You know,
We have
I
to.
forgot that I forgot Gangrel spit water the way, or well, not always water,
It
but
wasn't
I
water.
forgot that he like spit the same way that Triple H did.
No, he
It was
no.
weird to see on the same show. Like he did it from the ring
He
apron
did
up
it.
into the air.
Well, he did it from the corner.
He did it from the corner,
Mm.
yeah.
Now, okay. Do you know Gangrel's gimmick? Do you know what it's supposed to be? Because I only found
Yeah, the old vampire in the blood, and I got that.
no. It's a very specific thing that I only found out when I got into the source material. Right. So
Okay.
a gangrel is a type of vampire from Vampire the Masquerade, which is a game and a role playing game. Like, you know, and Vampire the Masquerade is one of the best RPGs you'll ever play. Get it on GOG now. It's fantastic. But it's also like a role playing game, and Gangrel is a type of vampires. Now, here's a weird thing. If you ever look at any games that Gangrel is in, or even on some episodes of WWE television at this point, you'll see a little thing underneath it saying Gangrel own property of White Wolf. White Wolf Entertainment is the people who own Vampire the Masquerade, and that's what
Wow.
that's a reference to.
Huh.
Yeah, I know, right?
I had no idea. I mean, this doesn't change my point about him spitting from the corner, but that's really fascinating.
Right? I know, I figured this out and I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, this is crazy.
So this is kind of like, well, not on the same staggering level, but this is kind of like when the WWE came up with an agreement with Marvel Comics so that Hulk Hogan could be called Hulk Hogan.
Yep. And also, well,
Interesting.
and in those comics, Hulk actually beats Hulk Hogan, so that's how they got away with it in one of the comics.
I mean, that's not kayfabe. I don't believe it.
But yeah, so that's what happened. So a lot of stuff that Gangrel does is based on that with the blood bats and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, he spits. But his one kind of makes sense because he's a vampire, right? And blood bat was his thing. When Triple H does it, it just looks cool. So I never really saw the conflict between the two, to be honest with you.
Oh, there's no conflict. I just did not realize there were two people on the same card doing the same thing.
Yeah,
Nowadays, they would be like, no, don't. You got to have something different. That was
exactly.
interesting.
No, that would
Who
be
did it
yeah.
first was going to be my question to you because you are the historian of all things Triple H.
I think Gangrel did it first.
Ah, okay.
I think Gangrel did it first. But again, Gangrel's one was very specific. It wasn't a way to hype himself up. It was an offering.
Right. Gangrel did it from 5 feet in a different place in the ring, guys. So it's totally different.
No, because it's supposed to be an offering. That's the thing.
No,
He's a
I know the
vampire,
character
right?
motivation. I know what you're saying. I'm
so
just being
it's
very
You
reductionist.
now, one thing that really did annoy me, and I kind of laughed a little bit. You know, instead of having the cool entrance up from the fire, obviously they didn't bring that with them, so they just have some candles and he walks through them, and you're like, that looks pretty crappy. Like, you know, it's like either do it or don't do it. You know what I mean? It's like, don't have candles. You're not Alistair Black. And they don't even have full candles. They have like 3 of them, and you're like, lads, this looks pretty poor. Like, but
I mean, they didn't even start the dry ice on time.
No.
And you're going to complain about candles?
he just shows up and he's like, hey, I'm gonna go do my
He's
thing. now.
standing there, and all of a sudden the smoke comes
Yeah,
out from
it's-
under
it's
him.
just
You're like, "Ooh,
that's-
bad camera take."
Yeah, you probably should have pre-recorded that, but sure. Look, the match itself was fun, but then the pre-match was really the story here, where Godfather's cutting this unbelievable promo of Gangrel, and Gangrel's like, and he's like, hey, usually I would offer you one of the hoes, but which again, sorry guys, he literally used the term hose here. Like, this is not us. You know, this is not the words we have chosen. These are the words that WWE have chosen for
Yeah,
for
if
these
we're
debuts.
listening, you gotta, guys. If we're going to cover things from a historical perspective, then we have to talk about them as they were at the time.
Exactly.
We can't get all trying to correct thing. Look, the guy had a hoe train. We're going to call it a hoe train. It was what it was.
Yeah.
Obviously, nowadays we would call it a very polite ladies stampede or something. I don't know what the hell
No,
we
what,
call
no,
it,
what I
but-
love about it, I forgot his finishers, and like Michael Hayes is going through his finish, and he's like, "You got to be careful for the whole train because that sets up the pimp drop." And I'm just like, "This is ridiculous. This is just ridiculous." Oh man, I don't know how he held it together because like, obviously Michael Hayes wasn't the commentator all the time. He was just there. I
Right.
don't know why he was there. I really enjoyed him on commentary, I have to say. But
Great color
he's
commentator. I was very impressed,
really good.
actually.
I thought him and JR were really good. But just listening back to that, I had to do a double take. I'm like, that whole sentence is absolutely ridiculous. Like, and again, it's
Yeah, there was line after line that I could have written down just out of pure joy of what they were saying with completely straight faces.
yeah.
The hosts surrounded them around the commentary table. They couldn't get over. And Derek's laughing at me. I'm trying to
And
get
they
through
did,
this.
and they did a
Pretend these are
little,
normal
and
sentences.
yeah, so they did a
Um,
little dance, and he was like coming back, and you're like, what is this?
what is this?
And then you're like,
Somehow this was still less tame than Jerry Lawler making comments about the Divas on the way down
see,
to the ring.
the
I don't know.
the difference was like with this, it was kind of, I suppose, fun. Like
Hmm.
no one was really demeaned compared to like compared to what King would say, where he just demeaned
Right.
people. And you're like,
No.
there's a difference because I suppose this is all in good taste and everyone's having a good time. But with King, you're like, you're just kind of being creepy, dude. Like, you know.
Kind of being creepy. And since I've been doing Diva of the Week, my Diva of this week goes out to the blonde in the red thong bikini. That's my choice. I don't know her name. I
Actually,
don't know how to find her.
there was one shot. There was one shot in it where it was just like, it just cut back and it was just all the girls just in tongs, and you're like, oh my god, why did my parents let me watch this as a 10-year-old? I was like, what is this?
I know.
It's like,
I
I was
used to
10. What is
I
this?
used to think that like the beautiful people's entrance or Melina's entrance or all of those are
No,
crazy.
they were
But the
nothing.
WWE did not care
No.
when the Ho Train entered the ring. I mean, you want to talk about a bent over, messed up camera angle that shouldn't. I was like, what am I watching?
Yeah, you're like,
This-
this is crazy. And then you go back and you look at why the censors are freaking out, and you're like, you know what? You probably had a point. Like it was
Probably did.
It was pretty out there, you know. Now don't get me wrong, it's a fun thing to see, and it's like completely of its time. But you're also like, wow, they really pushed the boat out here. Like this, really,
they are. I love-
really far, like really far. You can't even
I
see
love
the
the
boat.
Godfather shouting out into the crowd, like, where am I, like, where the pimp sat in here, and on the whole crowd chanting back. Now, I have a question.
Yeah.
He was the Godfather still at this point, right? Because that's
Yeah.
what he was referred to as commentary the entire time.
It was.
I don't know if this was changed just on the network as a voiceover,
Hmm.
but when he was introduced to the ring announcer announced him as the Good Father,
Oh,
and that
that's
caught
weird.
me off guard.
No,
So I
that-
don't know if that was a post edit
Had to
or
be.
what.
No, that was, I didn't catch that, but no,
Yeah.
like he was fair. Like the right to censor weren't even a thing yet. Stevie Richards.
Exactly. That's why I was like, what is going on? That's not who he is yet.
No.
That's because he himself, as a human being, later would have issues with the character that he used to play and
no,
all that.
Like, no,
but
Stevie Richards was still running around with his floozy, the Blue Meanie, at this point.
Floozy the night of the hoes and floozies. That's the title of today's show.
I blame Hunter Golden for bringing that in. I just think that's the best way to describe any kind of like lackey that they have. It sounds better than lackey, floozy.
Yeah, well, there's so many terms we're apparently not allowed to use after this week anyway to describe it. So we'll go with floozy.
Go with floozy. But yeah, no. So this, if that is in the actually, okay. So if that is a network edit, that's a grievous one. Here's another one, right? And it's one that
I mean, that, or I did watch this at 1:00 in the morning, but I believe I heard that very distinctly. I went, that
That's
sounded really out of place.
Yeah.
And he wasn't referred to that at all for the rest of the time.
no. He
But
was,
I love how the crowd, like, this is one of the things I love about the crowd before they were in it for themselves. At first the Godfather comes out by himself and gets booed. And I'm sitting there trying to remember, like, okay, why is he getting booed? He's not the heel right now. And then he turns around, invites the Ho Train out, and the fans go wild. And I'm like, that is so funny. Like, that's what I want out of wrestling, just some fun.
But that's what I mean. Like it was fun, you know. Like again, well, you know, obviously we were watching it as children, so we didn't know what these things were. We just kind of were going along with it. But like, I suppose being in that crowd, it would be fun because you feel like you're part of the show and not like in a horrible, in for yourself, you know, kind of thing. More like this is a big pantomime and we're all having a good time. And that's what this whole show felt like. This, you know, it was a UK show, UK crowd, which You know, I've been lucky enough to go to the UK many times for wrestling shows, and it's always a great time. Honestly, they're super fun, and yeah, it is what it is. You know, it's a snapshot of the time that I wish we were still in a lot of ways, because this is when
Because
wrestling
Dara
was
wants
good.
to be surrounded by hoes and floozies, obviously.
I don't know. I just think there's a lost art here with like managers and valets and
Yes.
stuff. You know, like there's a bunch of them. You know, you had Mr. Hughes, Miss Kitty, and the whole train, and it's just like you don't see this anymore. Like they're just lads coming out doing moves. You know what I mean? Like if you look at the
Yeah.
actual work rate of the people in working here, the matches weren't great, but they were a hell of a lot entertaining and lots of other things you'll see nowadays. That's the
Yeah,
truth of it.
and I think you mentioned that a bit earlier, and it's a good point to touch on is that there was consistent storylines that played through the entire night that connected to things.
Mm,
Like when there were run-ins, when there was interference, it didn't seem, oh, this is super
random.
random. Why are they
It
doing
made
this? It
sense.
was, oh, I get this.
Yeah.
Like you're furious because he interfered. Like it.
like
So yeah,
think about it, right? The show started off with Jeff Jarrett, right? And
yes,
China was involved in that match in some ways, right? Then the backstage segment with China, she had a run in with the Bulldog. The Bulldog interfered in her match, and then would it would set up the stuff that happened with Stephanie, and then that would end the Bulldog coming out with Triple H and The Rock's match.
right.
So
And not to mention China was also with Triple H, so it even
yes,
tied together that way.
so the whole show made sense, and those kind of overbooking, it wasn't
Hmm.
overbooking because it was literally telling a cohesive story. The story of this show wasn't the matches as such; it was more the British Bulldog wanting that title match, and that was the
Yes.
story of the night.
And this is one of the things that we talk about when it comes to having 30 writers versus having two writers or
Mm,
one writer.
mm,
They could actually tell, like you said, a cohesive story, but they could tell something that kept you engaged for the entire show.
mm.
Where a match that I might skip over, I watched because the things happening would somehow relate to what was going on later in the night. I mean, the styles of the matches were certainly different. It was a lot more basic
Yeah,
in terms of the actual move sets and whatever. A lot more brawling focus, I would say, and a lot more mat wrestling actually, which was cool to see. But you're not going to, if you want high flying moves. I mean, you got more out of Kane than you probably did out of anybody else.
well, X
But
Pac,
that's not what this show was about. This
X,
show
X,
was to tell a specific story.
X Pac and Jericho were probably the two best workers of the whole thing of the night.
Yes, right. It's sometimes I have lenses on when it comes to X Pac because I know so much about him.
But he's such a
Um,
good wrestler at the same
no,
time. You know,
so he blows me away. He
he's
really
so good, and he
does.
was
It's like getting reminded.
so ahead of his time as well. And that's the big thing about X Pac. Whenever you're watching him, you're like, man, he really was good.
Yeah.
You know.
No, it wasn't just, oh, I'm involved with the clique, so I deserve to get a push. No, no, no. You legitimately were a great wrestler, and we haven't jumped to that match yet, but I got to say the pyro. I love the DX pyro in the ring. When the crotch shots that then chops that then set off the X's
Mm,
that go into the air. I mean,
so good,
fantastic. Can
so
you
good.
imagine how much fun that would be as the performer to be doing that and jumping into the air and having pyro going off around you? And I just, those are,
But
it's like when I'm at a big rock concert and people think I'm weird for doing this, but it's just something that's become a habit of mine where I'll end up turning around and just staring at like the crowd for like 2 or 3 minutes just to try and soak in like what are the people on stage seeing when
mm,
there's 20,000, 30,000 people watching them. Like it's
that's fair.
such a cool vibe
Well, see,
to
that's it.
experience.
That's what this now. Obviously, before the pandemic, we're not going. That's unfair to say. Oh, it's not the same. Of course, it's not the same. But what I mean is, it's this rock concert vibe doesn't exist anymore. Even at a WrestleMania, like think
No.
about it. If WWE had this crowd at WrestleMania, they'd be like, "Oh my god, this is unbelievable." They're so into it. But now it's like, "Oh, okay, yay." You know, there's nothing to get these people going. And what I love about it is, with the pyro, it's consistent throughout the whole show. My favorite pyro actually is Jericho's pyro just before he enters. It's like one of the best uses of it. I don't know how they did it or who they got in to do it, but it feels more grungy. Everything about the show feels kind of grungy in like a good way,
Yes.
and it's more kind of, it kind of feels like an ECW show with money. Um, and that's kind of what I like about it. It's shot differently. The production of it is very, very not WWE-esque, and then the pyro even itself is more kind of like based in, look, we're in Birmingham. This is a rebellion show, so let's do this differently rather than
Differently, yeah.
this is a WWE show and it doesn't matter where we are. Like
I
they make
even
it
love
very
the
weird.
opening pyro in the ring. There's so much
Great.
stuff that they don't do anymore, and I don't know if it's for safety reasons
It's
or
money,
they.
dude. Money.
No, but
It's
I'm
cheap.
not, even when they do all the money and we see the fireworks going off around the stadium and stuff. Like I miss having the pyro actually in the ring itself.
Oh, on the
You know what I'm talking about,
turnbuckles.
like the pipes that go up.
Yeah, the
Not
turnbuckles
not
and
Kane
that.
stuff, but yeah. Kind of like the DX, but like they would do it. I'm like, oh, man, that's stuff that I miss
Yeah.
because it was so much more incorporated.
It
And we
felt,
always say it's money, but then they'll start doing it again in another week. So I don't know.
I don't know. It's like, I think the problem here is WWE knew what they were.
They had an identity.
Yeah, they knew what they were. They knew the brand. They were like, we are, as you said, like it was edgy, but it was its own kind of edgy. It wasn't trying to be ECW. It wasn't trying to be WCW. Bits of it really looked like WCW, particularly Jericho. Jericho, I forgot how much the WWE production on SmackDown and Raw hid how WCW he still was. On this show, when I was watching his match with
What do you
Road
mean by
Dogg,
that?
well, it's weird. It's just because I've watching it as an adult. I've never really kind of gone back and done the comparison, and it just kind of hit me when I was watching it. Whatever way they shot that match, it just looked like I was watching him in WCW again. And I can't explain it. It was just really weird. It was the ring gear he was wearing, I think, and just the way it looked. But you would never see that on a WWE television high cost pay per view, where obviously they'd shoot a little bit different, so the ring gear he wore wouldn't be a factor. But it was just a really weird kind of experience to have. That's what I mean. The show felt very much like a different show. It didn't feel like WWE, and that it's huge advantage.
Yeah, he did take some unique bumps. There was one he took where he went like neck first from halfway around the ring into the ring ropes. I was like, oh man, like he's going all out. Like, no, and I don't mean this in any sort of whatever way, but I mean, the dude's up there now. That he's just doing things he can't do now, and it's so cool to see him flying around the ring 21 years ago and just remembering. I mean, that's what I love about this is you get to see the guys that are, well, they're the legends now. They're the Hall of Famers now and whatever. And it's cool to see them in their prime and in their peak.
But you see, when you're watching it, like, remember, in a lot of ways, this is their childhood, which is
Right.
also weird.
But I didn't see this so much. I mean, this is my first time ever seeing this
Yeah,
pay-per-view.
you didn't see it, but I did. It's my
No,
childhood. It's my
no.
childhood. Let's put it that way, right? And it's
Yeah.
and go back and watching it, it's like, even without the big names like Austin and Taker, this is still one of the strongest pay-per-views that you can sit down and watch on the network.
Look, I love John Cena, but it's laughable to put him in the same category as
You
The
can't.
Rock.
You can't.
Even just watching this pay-per-view.
Like with The Rock doing and I'm not a Rock fan in the ring at all. I really do not like The Rock as a wrestler. As a
Even
person,
though he does his punch. What's sort of like?
yeah, as a person and as an actor, I actually really like him as an actor.
Oh, yeah.
He's great,
Absolutely.
and I'll watch any movies in. But and same with Cena, I love Cena as an actor.
Oh, so you're the one person buying a ticket.
I will watch anything with John Cena, and I think it's great. To be honest with you, but look,
No, I mean, I love the Marine as well. I'm with you.
I'm not talking about the Marine. I'm talking about even that Bumblebee movie or Blockers. If you haven't seen Blockers, watch it. It's fantastic.
I've heard really good things.
It's really good. But
But before we move on, because we've already kind of moved on to the Jericho and Rodo and cover that, but there was the Val Venus match happened before that.
right.
And,
Where you going with this?
and maybe you skipped over.
I
Because you didn't
skipped
talk
over this
about
one
it.
because I'm just like, there's nothing to talk about. All right, go on.
Well, there is though. When I was watching it, it was the only promo of the night where, because I know Val Venus is a really down to earth kind of guy nowadays, and would be cool to talk to because it genuinely seemed like he hated the lines that were written for him. It sounded like he didn't want to deliver them. It sounded like he had no investment in the character they were trying to build. He just really seemed to hate what was written for him, and that's really stood out to me actually.
But here's the weird thing about it is he might have hated it, but the crowd didn't.
The crowd loved it. Yeah, that was what was so bizarre.
Yeah.
It was the most nonchalant, non-energetic delivery of lines I've ever heard to get a massive ovation.
But like, this is the thing: everyone on this crowd, on this card, every single person that you can talk about was over here. You know, that was
yeah.
it. It was actually unbelievable when you think about it. You know, and I don't know. The only person actually who didn't have a character here was probably Tori. That was it.
And I'm gonna pretend I remember that match.
No, like as I said, you know, I don't even know what her character was. I couldn't tell you. But every other person, even Miss Kitty, was great. Like,
Yeah, it was very well done. Yeah, it was bizarre because we talked about how they're like telling a story and there was themes tonight. Well, there was a very, very solid theme that happened for the first half of the show before the British Bulldog happened. And that was violence against women. That seemed to be the recurring theme of the night. We had 3 matches or gimmicks in a row where either it was violence against them or portraying them just super sexually, which I was like, what's happening? This is weird. This is weird. This is weird. But then it culminated in, as we were talking about, Stephanie McMahon accidentally getting hit with a garbage can. So it actually had a payoff. Even what we would consider nowadays the offensive stuff had a payoff that would then go on to play a factor in the story of the entire show. So even if the writing seemed weird, it was still very congruent.
Like, yeah, and there's no real way to defend that. You can't.
I mean, that was my best attempt at saying it was written well,
and it was written well. Like as I said, the Jeff Jarrett stuff was designed to make you hate him. I don't think anybody there liked him.
And then you had the Godfather.
The Godfather being the Godfather, which
and then you had Val Venus.
And Val Venus.
You know, it was like 1-1-1-1, and then British Bulldog hit Stephanie. I was like, oh, okay, that's where they were going with this. It makes sense.
It made sense. Like this is a different world. It's a different WWE, 100%. And like when you're looking at this kind of stuff, remember they were really writing into this Jerry Springer world where, you know, this was just car crash TV, but even still taking those elements, they were still able to construct a card that told a story that held together. Not only held together, but did 2 or 3 transitions to build to the main event. Like as I said, from the very beginning, you knew what you were going into, and even the way they did the commentary there with instead of just telling you, oh hey, there's a match coming up, they're like, hey, don't forget, you know, we have a title match coming up, this is a big deal, here's why it's a big deal, compared to now where it's like, the big dog will be up next, and you're like, what the hell does that mean? What are you talking about? I did enjoy China dressing down Cole. That was really funny.
Oh, seeing him as a backstage interviewer is it's absolute gold because he just comes across as the perfect little dweeb.
Yeah,
he plays his character great. He's very Josh Matthews-esque, actually. I think
that's what they were going for.
Yeah,
I think that's what they were going for with Josh Matthews. They just kind of, Josh Matthews wasn't as good in that role as Cole was.
Yeah,
and
but, I mean, I like him.
Oh, yeah.
I've always been a longtime fan of Matthews. I was kind of sad when he got released, but I mean, there's better, unfortunately. He's very, very talented, though. I'm not taking anything away from him.
I'm going to try dig out the interview I did with Josh Matthews a couple of years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when he started with TNA. So I'll try to find out. Like, the worst thing about having all these having that back catalog of shows is that I don't know where they are, and I didn't know them properly. So if there's so much good content out there that I'm trying to find, I get back, and I also wipe my hard drive by accident of all the old shows. I managed to get a lot of them back, but I have to actually go through it. So if I can find them,
accidentally wipe your hard drive.
No, I actually didn't. No, what happened was I was getting off topic. I was fixing a laptop for my friend, and when you're making a boot drive for Windows 10,
Yeah.
you have to obviously put the USB stick in and that. I hit the wrong letter. I realized too late. Wiped the 4 terabyte hard drive.
That'll do it.
Yeah, and
That's the downsides. That's the downside to the convenience of how easy it is to do certain things. But since we're wildly off topic and talking about Windows 10, I am furious that they force installed Microsoft Edge in the latest update, and there is no way to uninstall it.
no,
You
you
can't
cannot.
do it through Control Panel. You can't do it through PowerShell. I'm ugh. I spent 20 minutes Googling yesterday, how do I get rid of this? Only to eventually find that people are like, you can't.
Yeah,
There's
you
no
can't.
way.
No,
It's
you can't.
just embedded in your system. Good
But
luck.
what you can do, guys, in order to get around all this tech censorship and spying, you can install the Brave browser from the link below in the description, and that really helps out the show because any little help towards the show really helps, and it doesn't cost you anything, and it's free, and you actually get money from it as well when you use the Brave browser, thanks to its cryptocurrency that you get for free, because no one owns your data except for you. So use the Brave browser, folks. People keep ringing me. I don't know what's going on, but people want to ring me. Yeah, Brave browser, folks. That is the browser that I use. Is what we use for Nerd to Know Media, exclusively. So
It's almost like I knew there was a segue that should be made there for
we
some
go.
a little plug there.
There we go.
It's almost like I connected some dots.
It's like we planned this out.
It's like it's like we know what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Kane versus Big Show was the next thing that really caught my interest. And I gotta say, it was nice to see them wrestle before I'd already seen them wrestle 1,000 times.
This is when it was still new, because around this
Right.
time, this is when they were still doing the Brothers of Destruction.
Mhm.
No, not Brothers of Destruction. It was the Unholy Alliance.
Oh, so even before. Okay,
So
okay.
Taker was actually injured here. Hold on 1 second.
But what I loved about this is, I mean, Kane and Big Show, sometimes you forget because we see them 20 years later, and that's the memory you kind of keep in your mind. But they were incredibly athletic for their size, especially the
Kane.
Big Show.
And Kane and Big Show. They were
Oh
really,
my
really good.
goodness.
Like, here's the thing, right? Big Show had debuted in February of this year in WWE, so he was still relatively fresh. Kane was around since 1998, but he was actually experimenting more with the going to the top rope. He was just after getting tag team with X-Pac. So him and X-Pac were against the Unholy Alliance of Big Show and The Undertaker before Taker got injured. So this was about 2 months after that. And this is
and they were still talking about that storyline during this match. They were explaining Kane's moveset by saying, hey, this is because he's been training with X-Pac. So this is what the moveset is. And, then with Big Show, they're like, oh, we see the influence from The Undertaker. So I just love the way that they connected everything.
Yeah, like that
through
was
that.
it. They just, like, the true lines of the show were just unbelievable. And that's what we're missing now. Like, we might get a reference to a storyline that happened a couple of years ago. But we won't. Like,
You won't, because it will contradict everything that has happened since. Unfortunately, there's no continuity.
The only time that there would be is when Undertaker comes back, and they'll reference something, But
Right.
that's because he's not there week to week. Like, you'll get a reference to he had these battles with like Ric Flair and Mankind and stuff. But if he was there every week, you wouldn't get reference to it. But now sometimes you get something that happened last week, and they're like, oh, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So,
No, they'll straight up just pretend
that just didn't happen.
the finish of the match I thought was really cool. It was a throwback to the Hogan Andre match at WrestleMania. It was just a simple body slam pin, but seeing the Big Show slam like that for his size, even though Kane's massive, I love that. I thought that was very well executed.
Well, what I love about this show as a whole is that it really built up the spectacle of everything. Even the throwaway matches, because there was the first half was very much setting the table, and then once they kind of, I think it was after the Jericho match, they really kind of leaned in to a more big fight feel. So everything here kind of felt bigger. Even the triangle match was weird. It was just a weird match in general.
Weird and fast.
Here's the thing though, Crash Holly and Christian wrestled twice on this card, and Jeff Jarrett wrestled twice on this card.
And China wrestled.
She
Well,
she
no, she was
didn't.
involved like 5
She's
times.
involved like 5 times. So that's another thing that you wouldn't see nowadays. You wouldn't
Hmm.
see people double jobbing, just cause. Because remember, the roster wasn't massive either. It
No.
was a great roster, but there was this much more sense of we are a team, we're all in this together, and you're gonna have to pull your weight maybe a bit more than normal, and
The
that
last
yeah
time, the last time I can really remember this happening was in, I don't know, what are we talking? 2014, 2015, with Daniel Bryan.
yeah.
And they used to have him wrestle 2 matches a night every week.
But
And
that's Daniel
the
Bryan.
fans seemed to get really upset about it. And, especially once he had to retire, because they said, well, the you purposely ran him into the ground.
Yeah,
You purposely overexposed him to try and ruin him and all this. Well, none of that worked
no.
because the fans loved him so much. But I think that's why we won't see it again, because of Brian getting injured.
But see, I don't think anyone here was overexposed. There's a
No.
difference between having someone out there and going, right, go out and wrestle 2 matches. Why? Oh, cause rather than go out there, have your match, warm up the crowd, and then be involved in something else later on.
Mm-hmm.
The Christian Crash Holly stuff was kind of pointless because we didn't see it, but it was probably to get people riled up in the crowd. Everybody loved Crash Holly. The actual match itself, the triangle match, wasn't great, but the backstage segment where Crash Holly and Hardcore Holly were trying to figure out stones and kilos,
Stones and pounds.
stones and
Yeah.
pounds, and it was just really good. I'm like, this is fantastic, and little things like that were really nice. It was just. I wish there was a hardcore title match here. That would have been nice. But there wasn't.
Of
Um,
course you do.
yeah, come on, it was the only thing
Of
that
course you do. But hey, I mean, they still weighed in at over 800 pounds.
allegedly. Allegedly. Right. So in the 12 minutes we have left,
Yes.
let's talk about the main event. And by the way, we don't know if the Undertaker has retired yet. We're going to talk about that next week when we're talking about the Last Ride series. So just everyone chill. If you guys think he actually retired, let us know in the comments below. I don't want to weigh in on that yet because everything's a work, and this probably is too. Yeah, we'll talk about that next week.
We will talk about next week, and we'll talk about why no one other than me could be any more excited by the way that documentary ends.
Yeah.
By the reason that the Undertaker had to have one more match.
Listen, he's going to return, and it's going to be against Sting. And
I'm not going to weigh in. 2
So-
seconds later, this is the match. This is his opponent.
I'm just gonna say.
I know.
So,
I was gonna say it.
It's gonna
No,
say
I just love the whole concept of, okay, I've retired. Wait, I can have a match with AJ Styles.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do one more.
Yeah,
that
and then
got
what-
me going.
And then what happened is he'd be like, "Oh, I can have a match with Sting." Like that, let's do it. But look, we'll see.
Oh.
We'll wait. We'll talk about that next week because there is so much to break down. I'm gonna give everyone the chance to go watch it. It's on the network now.
Yeah,
I haven't
please do.
seen it. I haven't seen it myself.
I've
So
only watched the first episode, so I'm very excited to see the rest of it.
we're gonna talk about that next week. Now, straight off.
The best cage match ever. Let's talk about it.
Well, it kind of is. In my opinion, it's my favorite cage match ever. It's the old black cage, which you never see.
I like it more than the old blue
I
cage.
hate the blue cage. I hate it. I think
Yeah.
it looks manky. The black cage looks great. It's the same one they used from St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
Mm-hmm.
And the only problem with this is watching this on the network. They absolutely abuse this footage because it has there's two songs from this time period. Fear Factory's album Obsolete was used was Fear Factory's Obsolete and System of Down Sugar was used Unforgiven, and that's the best video package of all time. I'll post it in our group on our page so everyone can see it. It is the best video package of all time, and on the network they've removed it. The second best video package of all time is from this, and it has a song by Guantanamo Apes called Proud Like a God, which is a phenomenal song. On the network they took it out, and it's like, why did you do
Don't
that?
want to pay the royalties.
Pay the royalties. Nobody's ever heard of that band. They're not doing anything at the moment. Buy the
They
song.
can use it. Why not? Why not help them out?
You know-
One of the things I loved about this cage, for whatever reason, it seemed like I could see through it. better.
That's it. And
Like
that's
if I
what.
was,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's the mesh cage you can never see through.
mm-mm. And this seems more realistic to
Real.
what you would get.
I agree.
And if you're
Yeah.
in the audience, I feel like you're not as hindered as you would be normally.
Like I've seen the mesh cage in person. The TNA cage is actually more like this for house shows. It's way better. And from a crowd perspective, you're more engaged. It's more. I think the black cage makes it more personal as well, because it does kind of add that grunginess to it. But I would imagine watching this in the arena, you're able to see a lot more what's going on. It feels more like when they hit off it, it makes more like of a oomph sound to it. You don't have to pad it or add sound effects to it or even mic it up like you would the other cage. I don't know. This just feels more legit. It feels more like an actual hate filled feud than,
Yes.
oh hey, we're having this match. And that's what I always feel when I'm watching the normal cage. I've never felt that cage brings anything to the table. I always
Yeah,
feel
it looks like
like
it hurts more too.
oh yeah, well I imagine it would. Like they're bars, big
They're
steel
bars
bars.
versus like the mesh.
Mm.
So yeah,
Like
and
the mesh is
it didn't
cool.
come down from the ceiling.
No,
They just come out and assemble it. I like that because it allows you to have a cage match as a surprise on a show instead of walking into an
and you
arena,
see the cage.
seeing it up in the air and going, "Oh well, I know one of the matches is going to be a cage match tonight." That
I
is one of the things I like about house shows
I
that they do.
think that's a cool idea. That's something they should do. That's something they should bring back. You know,
What?
so like have the bars. But
Yeah,
like
yeah,
hey,
yeah, yeah.
but like hey, guess what? We're having a cage match. There's no cage here, but there is, and then they come out. That's something they could do. Like this is the thing about WWE. They have no creativity anymore, man. Like they don't think outside the box. It's all very controlled and by committee, and that's not how
Yeah.
creativity works. I'm sorry, it's not. Like we love wrestling, and this reminds me why. But then when you look at the current product, you're like, if you're a bit more creative, and I know you can be because you're doing it now with the cinematic stuff, but week to week you could do stuff like this where you're like, you know what, cage match, boom, assembled cage. I
And
I think that'd be
yeah,
cool.
I think that's an absolute great idea. And I much prefer these cage rules over modern day cage
They make
match
way more
rules.
sense. They
Yeah,
make so
no
much more sense. Yeah.
pinfall, no submission. I would even take out the whole door nonsense.
Oh,
I've
make them
never
top over.
understood that.
The
And
door.
just make it you have to go over the top
The
rope.
door is okay.
Top of
The
it.
door is
You,
okay.
you like the door?
I don't like the door, but it makes sense. Like what I would do, I would padlock the door. If I was in a cage match, I would padlock the door as like you're not getting out.
Oh, well,
You know.
no, that's what I mean. But I'm saying in terms of a winning condition, I
Yeah.
don't I
Uh,
don't like that you can escape the cage through the door as a winning condition. I think you should have to go over.
yeah, I'd agree, but I think it does kind of work. Like, but the pinfall and submission is kind of stupid because then it's matching the cell rather matching the cage rather than a cage match.
Right, right. And not having a referee in the ring is great.
Yeah, it looks because it's like they're wild animals going in and killing each other. It adds to that believability of, oh yeah, this is actually supposed to be a wrestling match. This isn't supposed to be like they're not supposed to be friends. And what I love about this is why this is one of the best cage matches of all time is even though the end of it is a bit of a smudge, it's a really really good 17 minutes. Like
Yeah.
The Rock and Triple H absolutely go out there and have a phenomenal match. Like they're like as much as I love Austin, nobody wrestled Triple H like The Rock.
Oh yeah. I mean,
And
even The Rock's opening promo where he's standing on top of the
love
cage.
it. He
Uh,
looked like $1,000,000, sold everything, more over than any of the guys currently on a promo before he did anything. It's like, and I feel bad now for the guys of modern WWE because it's like you can't get that again. Everything is kind of working against you. It's like how can you?
you could stay off Twitter. That would
But
be
that
a good
works. I
way.
think, to be honest with you, as much as I enjoy Twitter, sometimes it's kind of, as we talked about with J.K. Rowling, it's a good idea to just stay off Twitter sometimes because you end up putting your foot in your mouth. But what I mean is like,
Expose yourself less is really what I mean. I mean, unless you're working with The Godfather, expose yourself less to the public.
yeah, well, I think it has to mean something, and that's the big thing. Wrestling doesn't mean anything anymore, like as such, outside of big
Right.
events, which is why when the big stuff hits, we're almost surprised because the big stuff hits rather than everything's supposed to matter. And
Mm-hmm.
on this card, everything mattered. So when it got to the main event, it's like, holy crap, this is a big deal. And it felt like a big deal because they
Yeah,
hyped
there
it for
was
the whole night.
momentum,
You know, it's crazy.
momentum throughout the night building up to it. As we talked about, you had the British Bulldog, you had China, you had Shane McMahon, you had Stephanie. All these factors that you're like, how we know these have to come into play
Yeah.
in a no rules cage match. How is it going to play out? I've seen this for you already knew, so I was sitting there like, okay, what tropes are they going to use? I'm probably going to get upset about this. I didn't.
No.
Was it a dusty finish? Absolutely, but I thought it was executed phenomenally well.
So and look, I knew when I brought this up to you, I was like, he's gonna love this. Like, this is one of the best shows. And I was hoping you hadn't seen it because it would have taken away some of the surprise of how good this was. But look, as I
Yeah.
said, my favorite time period of wrestling is these 4 months. I love these 4 months of wrestling, and even as a person, like the music alone. When I discovered Fear Factory and all this and System of Down, all kinds of stuff, this was a huge shift in wrestling and in that kind of pop culture as a whole. And to have something like this which just kind of catches all that in a little jar through the prism of wrestling is fantastic. Guys, if you haven't seen this, go and watch it. You'll have a great time. I have a VHS copy. That's the best way to watch it, but sadly sometimes you can't, but it's on the network. I still have my VHS copy that I taped from Skybox office when I was 10.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
so cool. Did that have the pre-match on it, the pre-show
It
match?
didn't have the
No,
pre-show match, but
because
it
the
does have,
network didn't. So I
yeah,
didn't know.
it has all the original audio and stuff. So it's one of
That's
the only
cool.
it's one of the only original tapes that I kept. I have that, Unforgiven, and a few others I think from that time period. But yeah, that's it. And look, we've reached the end. Dave, that was the fastest show I think we've ever had. Flew in.
It was fun though. I think we covered the show pretty well. I
I
think
think
it's a
so
nice
too.
review of Rebellion. It
1999.
was so weird to see it, man. So weird to see this imagery. So weird.
Well, look, guys, if you haven't seen it, do. If you're listening to us on Phoenix 92.5 FM, thank you so much for joining in. Go over to nerdtoknowmedia.com. Check out all the shows. Nerdtoknowmedia at gmail.com is how you can reach us. Go on to the Wrestling Rewind Facebook. Chat with us. Leave comments below if you don't want to do any of that. Myself and Dave will jump in and have a discussion. What did you think of the show? What do you want to talk about next? Well, we are going to talk about The Undertaker's Last Ride. But until then, Dave, is there anything you want to plug?
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter, Instagram. It's all the same. The Dave Stevens. If you guys are watching on YouTube, Twitch, that's what's in the little gray box down there. And
Yep.
you know, just be safe, everyone. Just be
Exactly.
safe.
Exactly. Stay safe in this crazy world where we don't know what's going on. But one thing you can be sure of is that we're going to go back to the past and remain the only wrestling podcast by people who do not hate wrestling. So we will see you next week here on the Wrestling Rewind, guys. Stay safe. Bye bye.